President Macron is now weighing up whether his candidates ought to stand down in favor of left-wingers, but many of his voters may decide, well, we don't like the far left. They're just as toxic as the National Rally. So we might not follow those instructions. We might vote for the National Rally because Marine Le Pen has detoxified it. She's moderated its rhetoric. She's tried to turn it into a mainstream right-wing party. And, you know, outside the sort of metropolitan Paris bubble, I think French people around the country see this party just as any other political party.
Can we learn from the way other countries manage their election? We had Australia with its compulsory voting earlier. We can see an example of a different way of doing things. In France, they are between two rounds of their parliamentary election. They have an elected president too. So how's it going for them? David Chazan is a Times correspondent in France. Morning to you, David.
Morning, Steve.
So we've had round one. Round two, it comes. Explain what happens in round two and more crucially, what's happened in the intervening period. What's going on at the moment?
Well, France's two-round voting system essentially is designed to prevent extremist parties from winning power. The National Rally, hard right party of Marine Le Pen, has always been seen as one of those parties. And people were offered an opportunity to register a protest vote in the first round, make a more considered choice in the second round. And traditionally, the mainstream parties of both left and right would unite to block parties like the National Rally in the second round. And that process is now happening to some degree. But the problem this time round is that President Macron called this snap election to try to stop France lurching to the extremes, to stop the political polarization of the country, but it's had precisely the opposite effect. So voters in many constituencies are now facing a second round choice between a hard right party and a hard left party, where there are three candidates still in the race for the second round. In many places, only two candidates are left in the race for the final runoff. But in more than 300 constituencies, you've got three candidates still in the race. So President Macron's candidates are now weighing up whether they should stand down in favor of candidates from a left-wing alliance, which is a somewhat fractious group encompassing parties ranging from the centre-left to the far left. But there's a lot of disagreement in Macron's camp about whether they should be supporting an alliance that includes the far left, led by a very divisive character called Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's often compared to Jeremy Corbyn.
And they're communists there as well, we were learning yesterday. Is this not a good system? We're trying to work about electoral systems, David, that it was put to us, I think, earlier this week that the problem in France is they're always told, well, here's your far-right candidate, don't vote for them, vote to block them. And at some point, they might turn around and say, I'm tired of being given a no choice here. I'm tired of being given only two choices, one of which I'm told I shouldn't ever vote for. I might vote for that person because I'm always given that far right vote. And gradually, have you seen this? They're getting edging closer and closer and closer to people saying, you know what, I'm just going to vote for that one.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a sense among a lot of French voters that they've tried the right, they've tried the left, they've tried the centre with President Macron. They feel disappointed with all of them. So why not give another big party that's never had a chance at government a shot at power? And that would be the National Rally for many of them. For others, it could be the far left party France Unbowed, which is a Corbynite radical party. So President Macron is now weighing up whether his candidates ought to stand down in favor of left-wingers, but many of his voters may decide, well, we don't like the far left. They're just as toxic as the National Rally. So we might not follow those instructions. We might vote for the National Rally because Marine Le Pen has detoxified it. She's moderated its rhetoric. she's tried to turn it into a mainstream right-wing party. And, you know, outside the sort of metropolitan Paris bubble, I think French people around the country see this party just as any other political party. They don't see it as the demon to be avoided at all costs, which many people in the Paris intelligentsia feel. So it's really unclear how voters are going to go in the second round and whether these instructions coming down from on high from the party leaders will actually make much difference in the way people vote.
So interesting, David. We're going to see what happens on Sunday. We've got a small matter of our own election to get through before that, but then on Sunday, it'll be really interesting to see how they actually end up taking the country. David, good to speak to you. That's David Chazan, the Times correspondent in France. Is Le Pen's national rally a bit like Reform? Is a question that people will be thinking as they hear that interview.
Ah bah oui.
Oui, je les ai tous passés. J'ai noté ça un peu, je sais pas si vous pour M6, est-ce qu'on peut vous poser quelques petites questions rapides?
Merci. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Ah non.